What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Inspiring Philosophy. I am Than Christopoulos, one of the new guys here at Inspiring Philosophy. Mike, as a reminder, is in Florida. He is speaking at Apologeticon, and he's on his way. So today he's not going to be here. But today we're going to have a fun time. I got one of my really good friends here, Dr. Ryan Mullins, and we have so much fun stuff to do today. For one, right off the bat, I want to let you guys know that we're doing a raffle today. Ryan, you recently wrote a book called Eternal in Web, a little book about a big God. And we're going to be giving out 5 copies of that today, as well as some new merch. Easter is not pagan. I guess I'll turn around a little bit so people can see the back. Got a little picture of Jesus and stuff, all that jazz. So if you guys want to win a shirt and one of these books, super chats are what you need to do to be eligible. And basically at the end of the stream, I'm going to draw a raffle. We'll have 5 winners. Again, book and shirt. And we're also going to be responding to your live questions and be responding to fun TikTok videos and other stuff like that. So also, just in the meantime, if you have a video that you want us to respond to, if we have time, we'll get to it. Send us your questions in the super chats and all that jazz as always. Ryan, what is your new book about? Kind of give us the lay of the land on what somebody could expect to kind of learn from the book.
I've forgotten everything I said in this book, so let me pull up my copy here really quick. So what I did in this book, it was I tried to take a lot of my academic thinking and publications on the nature of God and go, this is all way too expensive for people to buy. It's way too technical and jargony, and none of my sarcasm and humor is really in all my doesn't really come through very well in my previous stuff. So what if I've got a book that explains my current thinking about the nature of God and some unexplored issues that I've not talked about and that don't get talked about enough. What if I did that in a short, sweet little book, and where I'm allowed to be very sarcastic and also offer like spiritual insights? That's the big idea for this book.
Yeah, I really liked it. I think you nailed it. I remember, I guess a little humble brag too, I guess here, like you kind of talked to me a little bit while you were writing the book and in the publishing process and everything. And man, you just nailed it. Like you nailed that middle ground between popularizing everything and not being the snobbish philosopher. The snobbery just came from the sarcasm that is part of your personality.
Exactly. Because there might be moments where I'm like, this is complete nonsense. And but it's just, but I did it with some like wit and charm. So it's fine. But yeah, I had people like you and several others who like are not like in academia purely, who speak to the public. And so I was like, okay, these are people who know how to talk to the public, who know what's going on in some of the academic literature and everything. So they're going to be able to tell me if this makes sense or not. So I really appreciated your feedback and others. That was really helpful.
Yeah, it really did. So, I mean, before we get into some of these like TikTok videos and everything, why don't you give us a brief like rundown about the chapters and stuff? Because like, if you're okay with it, we can kind of just go through at least. I'll name off the chapters, and maybe you can tell us what you think is going to be the biggest thing somebody can get out of it, chapter by chapter. So like, chapters 1 is what is God? Yeah.
So what is God? It's pretty straightforward. You're just like, what exactly are we talking about here? Like, how do you understand what God is? Because if it's a little book about a big God, you want to know like kind of like what you're getting into. And so there I explain that the very idea of God is that of a perfect being, which is the single ultimate foundation of reality. And that's like a pretty big idea. But then you're going to want to know, well, how do I develop that idea into like an actual like doctrine of God? Like you can look at the Bible, and then you can also look at some other things like perfect being theology, which is a philosophical method for trying to figure out God's essential attributes. You can also look at this other thing called creator theology, where you ask the question, what exactly would God need to be like in order to create a universe like this? So I talk about some different methods and some different ways for you to try to figure out what exactly God is like.
Yeah, and that's actually really cool. I think you and I see really similarly when it comes to a lot of that stuff too, because that's really important stuff to even understand making sense of anything. Divine hiddenness, the problem of evil, fine-tuning, all that stuff. Chapter 2 is like the essential attributes of God. So why don't you unpack that really quickly and help us understand why that would be important and all that jazz.
So when you talk about the essential attributes of God, you're talking about what kind of attributes explain why God is perfect? They explain why God is actually God. And these are different from God's relational or accidental properties, which are things that God has only if he performs certain kinds of actions. So, for example, God is essentially omnipotent, like all powerful, but God is not essentially the creator, because if God doesn't create anything, well, he's not the creator. If
Yeah.
he doesn't redeem anything, he's not the redeemer. These are things that he only has those properties because he does stuff. So I go through like a lot of the different attributes and try to give my own articulation of them, and try to see how they're all systematically connected, and develop an account of God's perfect rationality as it relates to God's emotions, God's love and goodness and freedom, in a way that I don't see enough people doing today.
Yeah.
So it was nice to be able to like finally lay it all
Yeah.
out.
It's actually really cool how you did that in this book too, because you almost lay out a kind of choose your own journey
Mhm.
of of a philosophy of God here a little bit too, because like you're not just defending the view that you hold to, you kind of just lay out a view, like a lay of the land of like, okay, well, if you think God would create this way in a Calvinistic way, for instance, you're like, okay,
Mhm.
well, here's just what's going to fall out of this. Here's what's compatible. Here are the implications. If you want to view it this way, here are all the compatible ways of thing. Like it was really cool, and I really appreciate that. And I think that's one of the cool things about this book too. It's like it doesn't really matter what tradition you come from, you're going to get something out of it when it comes to
Yeah.
these chapters too.
Yeah. So in this chapter in particular, what I'm trying to do is lay the groundwork for like the common ground against lots of different theories or models of God. So that way, and then of course, like I've got my own spin on it that I put in there, and I make that clear to the reader that this is my view and I don't like these other things.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to lay enough common ground so that if you do disagree with other things I want to say later in the book, that's no big deal, because I'm going to try to put everybody on the same playing field. You want to be a Calvinist or like a Thomist? Okay. You want to be like a Molinist, or you want to be an open theist? All
Hmm.
right, well, we're not there yet, but here's the common ground that everybody has. So when we
Yeah.
come to these other debates later on in theology, we can have a like good conversation about like assessing the pros and cons of each view.
Yeah. And that directly just bleeds into a later chapter, which is like, I guess these are going to be two instances. Let's cover both of them, because you have
Mhm.
the consequences of creation, which is a chapter, and then you have like why create anything at all
Yeah.
would be the second chapter. Do you go into the problem of particular creation?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a bit
Oh yeah,
later.
you do. So, I mean, just for sake of brevity, why don't we just condense all that and like
Mhm.
explain the flow path there? Like, what are the consequences of creation that people are going to learn about in this book? Why would God create anything at all? And then, of all the things God could create, like why create this particular type of universe? Like, what are they going to get out of that?
Mhm. So I've got this nice chapter on describing the doctrine of creation ex nihilo, which is that you've got God prior to creation all alone. And this is what creation ex nihilo says, which is in contrast to a doctrine of eternal creation on which
Hmm.
God never exists alone. God always exists with something of some sort. And so if you're affirming this particular doctrine of creation ex nihilo, then there are certain consequences that I think follow from that, not just for reality, but for God.
Hmm.
So it's not like every action has a consequence, and it's not like God's actions just have no consequences for him at all. That makes no sense. So here's some of the consequences. If God creates a universe, well, then he becomes the creator. Like that's one obvious consequence.
Yeah.
His knowledge is going to change, because his knowledge is going to track the fact that, hey, I wasn't doing anything, and then now I'm doing something,
Yeah.
and he's going to know, oh, I exist with a bunch of stuff, whereas earlier
Hmm.
I existed all alone. So his knowledge is going to change. Now, depending on what kind of universe God creates, then that's going to impact God's emotional life. If God creates a bunch of electrons just to watch them spin in the void, yeah, again, I guess that's kind of cool, but
Hmm.
it's not going to have a big impact on God. Like, it's not going to be that big of a deal. Whereas if God creates creatures that have serious moral weight or moral value to them,
Hmm.
then that is going to be stuff that God cares about. And if God cares about something, that's something he's going to pay attention to and act on behalf of. So he's going to have emotional responses and active responses to those things. So that's going to have an impact on his emotional life.
Yeah.
And I also think that if God creates certain kinds of beings that are like persons, like you and I, that's going to entail that God has certain obligations. That like, and not everybody's happy with that, which I think is weird because the Bible's pretty happy with saying God made a promise and now He's got to stick to it. It's kind of like
Yeah.
a major Old Testament
Like
theme, but
like a covenant of sorts.
yeah, it's one of those moments where like the Bible kind of matters, but I think it matters, but a lot of theologians don't. A lot of theologians
Mhm.
say that it matters, but it doesn't to them, and so they'll say things like God has no obligations. I'm like, well, that's fine. You just denied, a major biblical theme.
Yeah.
Whereas I want to go, let's affirm major biblical themes,
Yes.
like covenantal promises. So when God makes a promise, well, when He creates a universe, I think there's certain obligations and promises that come with that. If He's going to create beings like us for a particular reason, well, now He's going to have an obligation or a duty of care towards them.
Yeah.
What exactly that looks like, it depends on some other things you want to say, and when I get into that later on. So now, why would God create, though? A lot of the Christian tradition has been unable to answer this question.
Yeah.
They'll say love cannot be the reason God creates. That's the majority view in the Christian tradition, by the way, which is shocking because you're like, I thought love was kind of a big deal in the Bible. And like it is. It is. Again, theologians are not always caring about the Bible. Whereas I want to say that love is part of the story for why God creates. Because when you love something, you deem it worthy of existence. You value its existence, you value its flourishing, and you value some kind of relationship with it. So God is going to create a universe in order to bring about certain kinds of values, certain good things that would not exist otherwise. One of those values is friendship between God and humanity. That's a valuable thing that would not exist if God did not create. And so I think that pushes you to say that that's like, a good explanation for why God would create, to try to bring about certain things that just wouldn't exist otherwise, certain really cool things, really good things. But now I've got this nice answer. God creates in order to bring about values that would not otherwise exist. And one of those particular values that God's really interested in is friendship with humans. But what kind of
Yeah.
universe? What kind of universe are you going to create that's going to make that happen?
Yeah.
And that's where it gets a bit more complicated, to say
Yeah.
the least.
It can, it definitely gets a lot of really uncomplicated, and that's one of the things I think that in my approach to my theodicy in the book that I'm writing right now, actually, I reference you a lot. Actually, which I actually did. I didn't even tell you about this, so we
Oh
should talk
no,
off.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, you might like some of the moves I'm making. So I love this. So the solution, part of the solution that you give to these problems then is going to be the idea that like God's motivations for creation in general is going to be for relationship and friendship with a created being in general, right? Um, I wish I had this TikTok video. I think the original creator took it down. His name is Parker, and he pokes at the significance of this question of like, well, why would God create anything at all or create this kind of a world, right? Because the basic way that this TikTok creator argues is he says something along the lines of like, well, God is perfect. Would a perfect God desire to create something imperfect? We live in an imperfect world. Well, so that seems like a contradiction is what they'll want to say at the end of the day, is like a perfect God would necessarily desire a perfect creation. We don't live in a perfect creation. Therefore, God is either imperfect or doesn't exist. Like what's the tie between an argument like that you see very commonly on TikTok and all these other things, and this kind of a solution that you kind of give here?
Yeah, so I lay out the basic groundwork for an answer without explicitly answering the question in this little book. Whereas I've got a forthcoming book that I'm working on that just takes this on like very explicitly. And so the idea is what it means to be perfect. That's already covered in an earlier chapter. Like what is it like when I talk about the method of perfect
Yeah.
being theology? And so what it means to be perfect is to have all of the great making properties, necessary existence, eternality, like a maximal power, maximal goodness, and so on. Well, necessarily anything that God creates cannot be perfect because
Hmm.
necessarily nothing created could have all of the great making properties.
Yes.
Because if you're created, well, then you don't have the property of being au se, which is not having a cause for your existence.
Yeah.
If you're freely created, well, then your existence is contingent. So you don't necessarily exist.
Yeah.
And if you're created, well, that means you begin to exist. Well, I've just lost three great making properties, three perfections. I've lost aseity, necessary existence, and eternality. and I just got started. That didn't take long for me to like get rid of like this whole idea of whatever's created just cannot be perfect.
Yeah.
So anybody who says a perfect God would have to create a perfect world, they're either equivocating on the notion of perfection, or most likely they just don't know what they're talking about, and so they're asking God to do something that's logically impossible.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I love that. One of the ways that I try to cash this out, granted this is a little too wordy probably, but it's precise and nuanced, I guess, is like I try to make a distinction between like absolute perfection and like a
Mhm.
perfect being. Because I would say that a perfect being is going to be a being that has like the maximal compossible uh, positive properties you can that do not entail negative properties.
Right.
Like I have a positive property of gaining strength, right? Whenever I go to the gym or something like that, but that positive property entails the negative property of not being maximally powerful, right?
Mhm.
And so God lacks the positive property of gaining strength, but that's just in virtue of the fact that it's not logically possible to have maximal power and the power to gain strength at the same time.
Right.
Hence the compossible language there.
Yeah.
And I think what that does is leaves types of values that can be instantiated outside of God
Mhm.
that would give God also motivation to create. Like, what would you think about something like that?
I think that's right. So basically, what you've done is you've articulated Gottfried Leibniz's account of perfection, which is close to mine. I just don't use quite the same language because I'm not like a German philosopher from from that time period, from the 1600s. But yeah, that's the idea,
Yeah.
and then the common claim from theists across lots of different religious traditions and philosophical traditions is that when God reflects on his own maximal power, he sees all the things that he could possibly create, things that
Mhm.
reflect his glory in one way or another. But the common claim is it's impossible for anything to perfectly reflect God's glory because
Yes.
anything created just can't be perfect. So yeah, so that's why there's all these other kinds of valuable good things in the great chain of being, with God at
Yes.
the top, all these other things lesser down. Those are all possible things, and they're all good things that could exist.
Yeah. No, I love that.
Mhm.
Just as a reminder for the people coming into the stream late today, again, Mike Jones is out of town. That's why I'm running the stream solo. Mike will be back tomorrow running a stream as well. If you don't know me or you don't recognize me yet, it's okay. Mike brought me on. I used to run Exploring Reality. I am now Mike's co-host here at Inspiring Philosophy. I got Dr. Ryan Mullins here with me today, and today we're doing a book giveaway on Mullins' new book, Eternal in Love, a little book about a big God. We're giving away 5 of these books. In order to be eligible for the raffle, you just got to send in a super chat. You'll also get some of the new merch we got. So, new shirt, Easter's Not Pagan. Put in your super chats, ask us questions. We're going to be responding to your live Q&As and some TikTok videos for fun as well. We're going to keep talking about the book and keep plugging along here. Really quickly too, what was I going to say? I forgot what I was going to say. So if I remember, I will tell you guys later. Ryan, so back to your book here. Do you cover like what's something unexpected? Like what would be an unexpected glimpse or like light bulb that you think somebody might get reading this book? Because like there's so many apologetic books out there. There's so many philosophical books out there that people might just go into like a book like this and expect to just read the same thing over and over again, maybe just fleshed out in a different way. What's something different that you do here that people can be excited about to read? I know that's a weird question,
Mhm.
but
No, it's not. But it's something I've reflected on a lot because because when I look at my book and people, especially people in the apologetics crowd, like they want the standard. Well, if an atheist says this, here's what you have to respond, and I'm like, I don't do that. I instead I'm like, here is a way to really develop the Christian story in a way that's coherent and clear that prevents objections from even arising. That's kind of the idea.
yes, yes, I love it.
So you could think of it as a very different way of doing apologetics, right? Instead of waiting for the atheist to like be like, well, what about this? I'm like, I've already explained why that's not possible, or why that's
Yeah,
incoherent, or why that's nonsense. Uh,
yes,
so that's part of the kind of idea. some of the spiritual insights might surprise people too, because I have a whole account of what I think it takes to be close to God that
Hmm.
I just found so obvious. And a lot of people who have read the book say they also found it really obvious once I said it, but they like, but they never heard it put that way. I've got a few people who like want to have like this really like very mysterious God, so they're just like, no, that's not.
Yeah,
They don't like any of that part. But
yeah.
everybody else has been like, oh yeah, this makes sense.
Yeah, I one of the things I actually really appreciated about this is, this might be really unique to me, by the way, just because I'm really big on just like not separating the spiritual and emotional and the intellectual sides of like living the Christian life. I think they all kind of work synergistically, and I'm a big part of that. But because I view things like that, this book almost felt devotional to me when I was reading it. Um,
Hmm.
like I actually felt like I was able to sit down and treat it as a devotional book where I'm learning about God in a fun way, and I'm like partnering with God as I'm reading it. Like that's the vibe I was feeling when I was reading it. And that was the big thing that I felt like helped me look at the book in a way that it makes it stand apart from typical academic philosophical literature and all that jazz. So I really appreciated that as well. Um, and I just really want to reinforce what you said too, because a lot of the books out there, yeah, they just give you the standard, like, here's the argument, here's the objection, here's the response. But all that really does is train people to parrot things, right? What you're
Hmm.
doing in this book is you're giving a structure of reasoning to people to consider how to build their own philosophy about their own worldview, how to reason about things properly in a way that, like, the objections are not actually going to hurt you. In fact, objections might just do the opposite effect, because the structure of the book actually helps you preempt the objections and build
Hmm.
into the construction something that actually like treats objections something that like shines a light on a way to build it better rather than something that breaks down the worldview, if that makes sense. And I really appreciated that. So I
Yeah,
think we need more of that.
it does because I think we do because I don't see a lot of constructive work like this typically done, which is annoying because that's kind of what I'm supposed to be doing as a systematic philosophical theologian.
Hmm.
And what I have built into the book without ever really explicitly saying it is I've got answers to like this kind of objection that like a perfect God would create a perfect world. I've got the answer to like the kind of standard problem of evil, the problem of divine hiddenness, the coherence of theism. All these kind of things are built into the book, so it's already are like there without me having to go, oh, by the way, here's the problem of evil, here's how you answer it. It's like, no, it's already kind of like flowing naturally out of the Christian story, all the answers to these issues.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. um no, I love that. For anybody in the chat too, because I'm just seeing people in the chat talking about the book and all that jazz, we'll put the link of the book in the video. We had some technical issues with the stream this when we were trying to set it up, so the description of the stream here looks a little incomplete, and that's because it is. We will put the link for the book in the description as well, but as a reminder too, you could get it for free through the super chat raffle entry that we're doing, as well as this shirt. So keep on sending the super chats in. My Ryan, if you're cool with it, maybe we want to get to our first TikTok video. You down?
Okay, yeah, it's fine. I don't know what we're getting into exactly, but
I have no
let's
clue
do
what
it.
we're getting into either, to be honest with you. I should have looked at these. I hope we don't run into stuff that I shouldn't. That we shouldn't.
Okay, so there's a
You
risk.
never know. People might be trolling us. I just got a bunch of links sent to me via DMs and everything like that. So we'll see what we got.
All
Let
right.
me just pull it up here. There we go. I know this one's probably some kind of problem of evil. Just the standard, if God is all good, opening in that caption makes me feel it's problem of evil related to you.
Yeah,
Can you
that's
hear
probably a
that?
good guess.
Can you hear that?
No,
No?
no.
Okay, one sec. Let's try that again. All right, what about
If
now?
God is all good and all
Yeah.
powerful, why doesn't he stop all the evil in the world? Is only half of a question. The full question is, if God is all good and all powerful, why doesn't he stop all the evil in the world that's not caused by human choice?
Oh, okay. That was the end of that video. Should we play it again?
That was okay.
If God is all good,
Well, I mean,
powerful, why isn't
I got the big idea.
Yeah, that just happened faster than I anticipated. I was waiting for the punchline. But okay.
Yeah, the punchline was, "Have you considered natural evil?" I mean, that's it.
Yeah. So let me finish the inference line, I guess, right? Which is like there like if God exists, maybe natural evil would not exist. Natural evil exists, therefore God does not exist. You can also probably just reiterate that in a probabilistic line or add in some sort of gratuitous natural evil nature to this if you want to even. What are your thoughts on that? How and especially how would you connect that to your book again?
Yeah, so what I do in the book is I try to figure out what kind of universe would God have to create in order to make friendship with humans possible. And so one of the things I point out, it's going to have to be a universe that has law-like regularity that makes biological life like actually possible. And from there, it also has to be a universe in which all the different kinds of creatures in it are able to exercise their own powers and have some degree of autonomy. Like they're really able to be themselves without God having to do all the causal work for them. And so that's a universe that comes with consequences, very real consequences for all the different kinds of cause and effect relationships that occur among different kinds of creatures. So right there, you've already got built into the system. If God wants a universe with physical creatures that have some kind of autonomy, you're going to have to let the consequences go where they go. Now, a universe like ours is one in which biological life is possible, and the consequences are, they're very real. We see them. Some of those consequences make life really great. Sometimes they don't. That's just part of the nature of a universe like this. And I think that's all part of the story. If God wants a universe where you eventually get this evolutionary process that produces human persons, they are really genuinely free, there's going to have to be the very real possibility of natural suffering in the world. Like, I think that's just inevitable if you're going to have a universe like this in order to get creatures like us.
But Ryan, God could have created a world where we have gnomic regularity and we still learn from stuff, but then there's just like this extra law where if I fall off a cliff, I bounce off of it like it's a pillow or something like that. Like, why did God create a world where there isn't that pillow law?
Right. This is one I never understand this objection, because when you start thinking about what kind of laws of nature you're actually asking God to do, one of the things is, okay, so you need to make it the case that God's existence in nature is not so overwhelmingly obvious to everyone that it forces or coerces a relationship. So if God's existence in nature is just incredibly obvious to us, we don't really get to choose, do we want to be friends with God or not? Like, it's just dictated to you. It's coerced. And that's not a good friendship. That's like Stockholm syndrome or something. So, okay. So God needs to have some kind of distance between us. Something where, here's the idea. If I want to be friends with you, I've got the opportunity to walk away from you. Your existence is obvious to me, but whereas with God, I can be like, screw you, I'm out of here. But with God, you don't have the ability to walk away from God. So it needs to be a universe where God's existence is not incredibly obvious. Now, when you think about these kind of things that these basic structures of the universe, now you ask, well, what about like a pillow law? Like, why couldn't that be like anytime that somebody falls, like they just bounce right back up? Or what if anytime somebody has this really evil thought about wanting to harm someone, God just creates a cognitive dissonance in their head, and so they're not able to perform that action?
Yeah.
The consequence of that would be that God's hand is so obvious in the universe that it becomes a law of nature, and humans would see very clearly, oh, well, God's there, and God's not letting me do any of these things. So you're not going to be able to have this sort of environment where creatures can actually develop their own moral character in meaningful ways and actually figure out, do I want to believe in God? Do I want to actually trust God? No, you're going to be coerced because God's hand is so obvious in everything that's happening.
Yeah,
that's part of the answer.
It's a part of the answer. That was what I was just going to say. There's so many pieces of the puzzle I think you can put together on a question like that, because somebody might even still ask, like, well, why would God just create a world where there are fine-tuned laws? Like, why does God need fine-tuned laws? Why can't he just like hold the universe? Is typically what I'll hear. Like they'll say something about God actively doing something constantly to the universe where there doesn't have to be fine-tuned laws. Kind of an objection. What do you make?
Mhm.
What do you make of that? Because I
find it
almost
such
kind
a
of want to like
a
disregard
bizarre thing.
it.
I do. I do. I want to disregard it because I think it's nonsense. So there's two different ways you could go about this. One is to just point out like how like ridiculous this is. So I'm looking at this kind of thought experiment that Moses Maimonides comes up with, and he's like, could God create humans without the rest of the universe? And you're like, what would that even look like? You know? So imagine God's like, well, I'm going to create humans first, and then I'll create the universe later. And so he creates all these humans, and he's like, let me just kind of like put you over in this void over here while I create like
Mhm.
something to put you in. And you're like, they're just kind of like floating around. Like, how do they move? How do they do it? Like, what does that even mean? Like, that
Is
just
there
sounds like
space time to
crazy
move
talk.
in? Like,
Right. It seems like you got to
yeah,
have some kind of thing, like sort of basic structure, which makes sense because here's what laws of nature are. Laws of nature, that's just a description
yes,
of the kinds of substances that exist, the properties they have, and the ways they interact with each other. That's it. So if you create any sort of substance that has an essence, which is kind of what you do when you create stuff,
yeah,
well, that just entails that there are certain ways that these things relate to each other. So it is impossible to create anything with an essence and other things with essences and not have some sort of like laws of nature. Like that just comes with
yeah,
creating stuff that has natures. Like that's just how it goes.
yeah. No, 100%. Just really tangentially related about you not being able to escape me. I won't say where I will be, but I'm very excited, and for the audience to know, like, I think what month did I say I'll be up there? I don't even remember when I'm going to be there, but
I forgot now.
I will be across the pond with Dr. Ryan Mullins, and we did I tell you what I'm going to bring with me?
I can't remember because we've chatted a bit about it like here and there sporadically.
So we're gonna be somewhere in Europe, and if you know anything about Europe, sometimes Europeans don't think too fondly of Americans.
You did tell me about this, yeah.
And I'm gonna bring to Ryan a decked out American flag jumpsuit with some aviators and like a mullet wig and stuff like that. And we're gonna film some fun videos in Europe together. And I'm really excited. Oh man, it's just tangentially related because you truly will not be able to escape me. All right. Let's we got some super chats if you want to get to them momentarily here for a little bit.
Sure.
Before I bring them up and then before we get to the next video, just a reminder, book giveaway. Ryan Mullins is here. We're giving away a little book about a big God, 5 copies of this, as well as our new merch that's launching, Easter's Not Pagan. Come check it out on the merch store as well if you want to. If you want to enter into the raffle to get one of those 5 prizes, all you got to do is leave a super chat, and we will announce the winners at the end of the stream. With that, here's our first super chat. Bruce Pates says, "Where's Big John Steele?" I don't know. I don't know
These
where
are
he
good
is. He's probably
questions.
working right now in Canada. Foxy Grandpa, thank you for the super chat. Fan, I'm begging you and Mike to make some vids responding to Deconstruction Zone. In my opinion, he's smartest, best read atheist out there. All I will say is that if you want something for us to respond to, email me whatever it is that you want us to respond to specifically. You can email me fan@inspiringphilosophy.com, and if you have anything in there that you want us to respond to, like I said, we'll triage it, look through it, and we can consider it. Just we got to know what you want us to respond to. General things are not going to be too helpful for us because I don't know about Mike, but for me, I'm kind of a boomer, and I don't actually go on social media. Like, if you look at my screen time, I'm never on my phone. So I need your guys' help there. Niels, thank you for the $5.99 super chat. And Thanos, Have you seen Rhett and Link on the Soul Boom podcast? I personally know a few guys who deconverted due to their original videos. I've not. Send me anything relevant for that if you want us to respond to, and give me some more context if you can too. But email me, Than again, than@inspiringphilosophy.com. Give me some context. Give me the links to what I need to know, all that jazz, and I can take a look if you want me to. No, these are for you yet, Ryan. I'm so sorry. Niels again, thank you. Hey guys, I am from the Netherlands. Apologetics is not known here at all, sadly. You have any tips on how to bring apologetics to my country? I'm not familiar with the Netherlands. Ryan, do you have any advice?
Yeah, this is what's kind of surprising to me, because the Netherlands used to have a really rigorous school of theology. There was this, like, these whole traditions, like based after like Vincent Brunner and others, but those days are kind of long gone. But there's still good people I know in the Netherlands, but they're not interested typically in doing popular level work, so they're doing more like just kind of pure philosophy. The ones I'm aware of that I know in the Netherlands, which is not a lot of people. So yeah, it's a bit difficult. I mean, I guess the best thing to do is try to start up like your own apologetics chapter, but
Yeah,
there's not like a ton of, it's not like a vibrant theological community.
And just subtly start doing it too. Like, I know in my local communities, people didn't really care about it too much, and it wasn't until people started knowing who I was that people did start caring about it. The amount of times I've heard, "Yeah, I never really cared about this stuff or thought about this stuff until I started talking to you," is immense. And then you just have this branching effect of people starting to care about it. Once you have people within your own local like circle that care about it because you care about it, and then their local circles grow, and theirs and theirs and theirs and theirs. And I think that's the best way to do it. In fact, I think that's the reason, and I think that's the reason why Jesus kind of gives us the Great Commission too. Like, it's we go to our personal spheres of influence and influence from the outside in like that. I think that's going to be the best way to do it. So, yeah. All right, Ryan, are you ready for the next TikTok video?
I'm as ready as I can be, I guess.
All right. Well, I don't know. This guy looks really intimidating. So, if you need to talk about your faith and why you need to, why you're like doubting or deconstructing after this, we can talk about it. Okay. Oh, okay. Whoa, this will be actually really interesting. I didn't even realize what this is until I looked at the tab. It says Understanding Norse Mythology. So, God says. All right, let's just do it, I guess. If you can't hear it, let me know.
How Adam from the Bible lived to be like 1,000 years old. He did? Yeah, and Eve and their kids and stuff lived for ages too. Yeah, I think that was punishment for eating the forbidden apple, God's divine law of witness. You know, so people knew what went down and wouldn't do it again. Wait, he lived that long after eating an apple or some kind of fruit? Yeah, why? Well, it's probably nothing, but in Norse mythology, the gods gained their youth, vigor, and near immortality from these apples that the goddess Idun grew in her orchard. Ah, Idun's orchard, Garden of Eden. Yeah, it's a funny coincidence. Yeah. I mean, well, it would just make a lot of sense then as to why God didn't want humans eating them, right? And come to think of it, there is this story in Norse mythology where Loki orchestrates the abduction of Idun, and all of the other gods grow old and weak because they don't have access to her apples anymore. Don't tell me you think the biblical god is actually Loki. Oh, no, that's silly. That would mean that Loki only pretended to give Idun back, let all the other gods kick the bucket, and rewrote history to pretend that he had always been the one and only God. Yeah, that would be ridiculous. Oh.
My blood hurts. Okay, I mean, I have a few things I could say, but you're the scholar, Ryan.
I mean, look, if someone wants to write some fan fiction where some Norse mythology somehow made its way to the ancient Near Eastern world, like that could be a cool. I'd watch that, like that science fiction show. Like, that'd be fun. That's all I got, though. That would be fun.
This would be a fun science fiction show. Yeah.
Yeah, I could easily see like Marvel doing something like that as well, because they're like running out of content or something. Like, yeah.
So what's actually, I don't have this off the top of my head. For anybody interested in actually like combating that idea, first of all, just from a purely philosophical front, if Christianity is true, and what I would take to be the divine council reading of the Bible to be true, and you have like rebelling Elohim and stuff like that, is it really going to be too surprising that you're going to have some parallels, very very weird like parallels? I don't think so, right? Um, but further on than that, I in my old channel exploring reality, I have a video titled "Was Jesus a copy of other pagan deities?" And I actually specifically target the whole like Norse mythology side of stuff. And the case there is very weak because just because there's a parallel there does not mean there's a causal connection as well. In other words, how in the world did Norse mythology enter into the ancient Near Eastern world around the authorship of Genesis and all this other stuff? You're gonna have a hard time explaining that. Now, if you just want to say like Loki exists and the God of the Bible is actually Loki or something like that, again, have fun explaining that because the God of the Bible, like you're just gonna have to come up with some really weird ad hoc explanations to try to even try to salvage this in the first place. Is it a plausible hypothesis? Like, sure, but I think the predictive power and the of the Loki hypothesis is like next to zero because all you really know about Loki at the end of the day is that he's the god of mischief, which doesn't really tell you much about particularly what he's going to want to do, right? We're on the hypothesis that a perfect God exists. I think what you actually would expect to see is something very, very similar to the Christian story. That's just my 2 cents. So, yeah. Anything else you want to add into that, I guess? Ryan?
I mean, it's kind of funny. I mean, I'll give it that, you know.
It's funny.
But
yeah, it's good comedy.
It's
good.
kind of funny.
Mean, it's
Yeah.
funny. It also, like I said, makes my blood hurt a little bit.
It does. It does. But the guy's got good comedic timing. So, you know, we can give him that much, I guess.
All right. We're going to move on to the next one. Okay. The caption here is... Oh, okay. I was going to guess right. The caption is... The initial caption is one of the earliest groups to follow Jesus. Here's my prediction, Ryan. It's going to be about the Ebionites. And they're going to argue that Jesus was not originally God. If I'm right, chat, if I'm right, whenever you reference me from now on, you have to put P, like the PBUH at the end of my name from now on, because it'll be prophetic. Here we go.
The earliest groups to follow Jesus believed some things that would straight up shock some folks today. They didn't believe Jesus was divine. They rejected Paul outright as a corruptive force and tried to preserve the faith in a way most Christians today would barely recognize. And they survived a long time, even influencing early Islamic thought on Jesus as a prophet. You see, history isn't as neat as modern Christianity makes it seem. A lot of people assume that there was always one way to do church, one way to worship, one way to believe, but that's just not how it was. Early Christianity was wildly diverse, like the Wild West in a lot of ways. You had small house churches that were often separated by hundreds, if not thousands of miles from others, different regions, different cultures, different time periods, with loads of varying beliefs. Marcionites, Montanists, Docetists, Carpocratians, Thomasines, Joannines, Sethians, Valentinians, literally dozens and dozens, hundreds of these groups over the early centuries of the church. So I've been asked to do a little series on these early groups, what they believed and why they were eventually erased by what was becoming Orthodox Christianity in the 3rd and 4th centuries, and then the later medieval church, because a lot of what you are hearing today, let's just say there's nothing new under the sun. And in talking about some of these early groups, you'll see that the more things change, the more they stay the same. And today we're going to talk about the Ebionites. The name Ebionites comes from the Hebrew word Ebionim, the 4 ones. Some think they call themselves this, inspired by Jesus' Beatitudes. Others think it was a label slapped on them to make them seem weaker or significant. Either way, these folks were Jewish followers of Jesus who believed in him as the Messiah, but not as God. In other words, no Trinity. And they were hardcore about keeping the Torah. For them, Jesus was not a replacement for the law. He was proof that the law still mattered. And Paul, they saw him as an outsider who hijacked Jesus' message.
Oh my gosh, you guys, you sent us a 5-minute video here. I didn't even realize. I was like sitting here like, man, when is this gonna end? Okay, first of all, you see, I am a prophet. It's not that actually. It's just you, Ryan. You can attest to this. You just see the initial markings of where somebody's probably gonna go, and you're like, yeah, I know exactly what's about to happen.
You could just be like, oh, we're doing this again.
You see, look, people are ready. Mighty Than, peace be upon him. You see, there's only one truth, only one God, and Than, peace be upon him, his messenger. Oh my gosh, it's so funny. Okay, we can keep watching the video, but let's address a few things here. One, this just sounds like a rehash of the Bauer thesis. If anybody knows about that, which I think is outdated. Let's talk about the Ebionites really quickly here, with them seeing Jesus as not God and all that stuff. Ryan, have you done much digging into this topic, by the way? I actually don't know.
No, because I it's been a long time since I've looked at like the early origins of Christianity. But like, here's what kind of confuses me sometimes. So, I do like a lot of basic like reading for like my university studies and all that kind of stuff like ages ago. And then I come across a video like this and I'm like, what are you reading and where are you getting some of this stuff from? Like, that's some of the stuff that really confuses me. Like when I read like a standard, like, intro and like early origins of Christology or something like that, I'm not coming across most of these things that people are talking about in these TikTok videos. And so I'm like, what are you going on about? Where did you get this from?
Yeah.
So this is something I encountered on TikTok recently, and I was like, what are you going on about? I don't know.
I mean, he's right that there were many early Christian groups, and he's right that there were deliberations, and he's right about a lot of this stuff. Here's one thing though. I have yet to see any case of early adoptionist Christology or any like non-Orthodox Christology that was not rooted in the philosophical presupposition of Platonic or Neoplatonic thought. Like the majority of the time, they just reasoned from their philosophy to the lower Christology. That's going to be the source of their arguments at the end of the day. And so, like when you're going to point to the Ebionites and all these other and all these people, all the other ites, right? What you're going to find is it's never going to be justified in virtue of what Jesus said or any of these cases. What you're going to find is that these were mainly philosophical disputes, not anything that's going to be like rooted in the Bible or anything that Jesus claimed about himself. And this is why, and then there's a really sneaky subversion that happens here, which is, well, this is how Christianity as we know it today won at the end of the day and like killed off the rest of these other things. And it's like, you're painting a picture of you're painting a historical picture that makes it seem very subversive to like traditional Orthodox Christianity, but it's not. Like we have a minuscule amount of people in a time and place where like they don't have political power or any of these other things, and it's like,
right,
where are you getting this narrative from? Well, Emperor Constantine, blah 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 blah, and that's where it's going to come from. So it's like, this is just so silly from the outset.
It really is, because it's definitely the case that the history of Christianity is messy. You do have a lot of different groups. There is a lot of like debates that take place over several centuries. But yeah, you're right. Like at various points, Christians have no political power, and it's not till much later, well after the stuff he's wanting to talk about, where you see really significant power from different Christian groups. Where then you can go, okay, there's a little bit of government corruption going on here and there. But this is like way after the time period he's wanting to talk about. So that's why, like, when I look at some of the stuff, I'm like, I recognize some of the words you're saying, but like beyond that, like I just don't know what you're really going on about.
One thing I'm learning from this TikTok video is that I need to do a better job of delivering things in a way that's going to be confident enough to fool people, because that's one thing TikTok creators are really good at, apparently.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. That confidence level that like that's every video we've seen so far has. Oh my gosh. Yeah. They're like, I know exactly what I'm talking about. There's no reason to even ever question anything I have to say. Whew. Yeah.
Well, let's see what.
And you got to get a good
there's,
car video, you know?
there's still about 3 minutes left. So let's like.
Give it a little bit more. Yeah, sure.
his message and turned it into something it was never supposed to be. And we get the earliest mention of a group like them in Justin Martyr's writings from 155 to 160 AD. But it was Irenaeus in about 180 AD who first called them Ebionites. Later, guys like Origen in 212 and Epiphanius in the 4th century would write about them too. But keep in mind, these were their opponents. And this group likely emerged after the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 AD as Jewish Christians fled to places like Pella and the Decapolis, modern Jordan, and tried to make sense of their faith in a post-temple world. And what did they believe? Well, first, Jesus, not divine, just a man. The Messiah, sure, but born from Joseph and Mary, like any other person. Second, salvation, they believe that you must keep the Torah. Faith was not enough. You had to live the Torah out. Third, Paul, they straight up rejected him. They thought he hijacked Jesus' message and corrupted the faith. In their gospel, it was like Matthew's gospel, but with the virgin birth story cut out. And some of them were vegetarians. They opposed animal sacrifice, and their version of Matthew even changed John the Baptist's diet from locusts to honey cakes. The Ebionites were mainly found in Nabatea, Moabittus, Bashan, and the Decapolis.
All he's doing is just telling us what they believe, but not telling us why they believed it and why we should believe what they believed and why their belief was closer to the original teachings of Jesus or the original 12 disciples or anything like that. Like, what hypothesis seems simpler and more and better explains the data? But the traditional Orthodox Christian belief that we have about all this stuff was the original belief, and the reason it won out is because it was the original belief. And all these other ones were just distortions of what was original and mainly in virtue of their philosophical implications, or this grand conspiracy that some evil people that wanted to not follow the Torah and blah, 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 blah. Like, I'm sorry, man, but what are we doing here?
I mean, that's a really good point, because if you wanted to, you could sit in your car right now and every single group he's mentioned, all you do is you just make a single video about that group and here's what they believed, and then you say it really confidently, and then somehow the implication from that's what they believed, therefore I guess it's true, is what you're supposed to get from that. But you could do every single one of those different like groups for that. And it also, exactly like you pointed out, it ignores the fact that we know some of the arguments that were going back and forth at that time period. He mentions people that kind of lay out some of those arguments, like Origen and Irenaeus and whatnot. And so we are aware of some of the kind of debate that was taking place. And so we know some of the reasons for why these different groups are rejected. But you don't have to do that, because you just sit in your car, you just go, here's what this other group thought, here's what the Docetists were saying, here's what you just go on down the list and just ignore all the other parts, because that's not convenient.
It's ridiculous. So, friendly reminder for everybody, we're doing a book giveaway. Ryan Mullins here is a PhD scholar. He's one of my good friends. Wrote a book, Eternal in Love, and we're giving away 5 books, and each book winner gets also a free new shirt. Easter's not pagan. If you're wondering where Mike is, he's gone traveling for Apologeticon. That is why I'm here. He will be back tomorrow, though, streaming live. And really quickly, too, if you like what we do here at Inspiring Philosophy, just a friendly reminder that we rely on donations and we rely on your guys' support for us. So link is being sent here in the chat really quickly. Remember, you can go to our website, which, by the way, you guys, if you don't know, I recently rebuilt the website. It looks way better than what we here at Inspiring Philosophy used to have. So you can go to inspiringphilosophy.com/give, and you can sign up through here. And if you want to help support anything specifically, just remember, you can click add note, comment, and type in something here really quickly. I think the last one we did was the Netherlands one, yeah?
I thought we did one right after that. No, okay, I guess not.
No, we didn't. That's the next one. So, Little Guy 2020, do you guys plan on doing a video on Melchizedek, Jesus typology, and real presence? Keep up the good work, Thanos. Thank you so much. If you guys want us to, you can let us know. And because Mike and I, we want to do and create on topics that you guys want. We're not doing this stuff for us. We're doing this stuff for you guys. So just if you have stuff like that and the majority of you want it, we will work on something. Just keep on letting us know that you want it and we'll get to it eventually. Coley, thank you for the super chat. God made you perfect. Thank you, Coley. Oh man. Sam Bradley, is causing God pain worse than causing humans pain? Ryan?
See, this is actually a question I don't have a good answer to, but it's one that's come up in the past. So when I was doing my book, God and Emotion, there was this particular argument that I couldn't get into the book because the book had to be super short. So it goes a little something like this. And you see this about 100 years ago is when this argument came up. If you think that God is passable, that God can experience like pain and suffering and all that, then you could imagine some kind of madman who like chooses to go to hell and just like wants to suffer all the time just so that God is forced to suffer with him. And this was the kind of thought experiment. And the way it was used by Marshall Randall was this guy who wrote in the year 1900 was to say, well, therefore get rid of the idea that God suffers. Whereas I'm like, no, let's not do that. Is God? Here's what I think, I guess, answering this question. When God creates a universe like this, and he's creating creatures like us, he knows what he's getting into. He expects to experience suffering with us. So God's big enough, he can take it. And this is something I argue for in the book, is that God does not let us undergo any sort of suffering that he himself is unwilling to do on his own behalf. So God's got some skin in the game. Is it worse to cause God suffering? I mean, I don't know. In one sense, like God could, if it was really so bad, God could be like, screw you, you don't exist anymore. So the consequences there don't seem as dire as it does for causing us pain. So I would think that the moral value might be more on causing humans pain than it would on causing God pain. But it might depend on the specific action you're doing, though.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like kind of struggling to figure out exactly how to answer this.
It's very muddy to me. I like, to me, whether the rightness or wrongness of an action and like the weight of the moral action is going to be in like the judgment of that is going to be embedded within like the narrative context of that action, I think.
Yes.
And you have to look at it on a holistic basis, I think. So I don't think that you can answer this and give in a blanket statement type way. I think it really just depends on the context that the statement's embedded in
Yeah.
the whole narrative. I know that's really cop-out complex answer, but I think if you just apply that answer to any moral question you have about your own life in general, you'll see very quickly that's going to ring true.
Yeah, it does. Because like with ethics, I mean, in general, you've got some basic principles, but how they play out in any given situation depends on a bunch of other relevant moral and non-moral facts in the situation. So a lot of ethical theorizing really does have to look at case-by-case situations.
Yeah.
Okay,
next super chat, Sean Moss. Than, none of these are for you yet, Ryan. I'm sorry.
So it's all right.
Ask Ryan questions. You can ask me questions too, or you can compliment us if you want to as well. Whatever works, man. Than, you did an awesome video in Genesis 3, specifically with the women. Don't fully understand. Could you expound upon what you talk about in the video? Yeah, sure. So for context, to anybody that did not watch this on my old Exploring Reality channel, I made a video on Genesis 3:16, specifically the verse talking about God, where most modern English translations are going to say it's like they're going to translate it as God punishing women with painful childbirth. And what I argue in that video is that that's a bad translation. And the basic idea is like I kind of go around a few different strings of evidence. One is going to be the narrative context of Genesis, and the poetic parallelism in the Hebrew that you'll find as well, stuff like that. So, for instance, the Hebrew reads pretty adjacently to what the English sounds like for Adam, where it's like toilsome work or something like that. But the same Hebrew words are used when it comes to the woman's child, whatever it is, right? And I frame it like that because when you look at the Hebrew words that are used here, one, I think that when you look at the Hebrew, you're going to find words that are actually better suited for the act of childbearing and child pain, like bearing, like birth pangs and stuff like that. We actually have specific Hebrew words for that that are not found in the text. And the words that are used in this text are always in association with the act of conception itself. And so the long story short is when you take into account the narrative context, the poetic parallelism, and the specific Hebrew words used in Genesis 3:16, I think the better translation is toilsome conception, just like you would see toilsome work for Adam. And that fits within the narrative context of Genesis and the curse as well, because typically what you see with the matriarchs is what? Women wanting to conceive children, but they can't. It's an act of God typically, or a miracle of God, that they can in the first place. And that fits very neatly then within the Genesis 3:16 context. That's the bird's eye view of the video. You guys can go check it out if you want to as well. So, Ryan, anything there?
It sounds plausible to me. I mean,
all right.
Yeah.
Here's a fun question for you. How do you, not you, how do ye solve the problem of logical positivism? Really quickly explain what that is too.
Yeah, so logical positivism says that a statement is meaningful if and only if you can verify it with the five senses, or if it's just like analytic, you know, like a bachelor's and unmarried male. So it's either analytic or it can be verified with the five senses. Now, the problem with logical positivism is that it's self-referentially incoherent. It's incoherent because it doesn't meet its own standards for meaningfulness. It's not analytic. I can't touch it or smell it or taste it or hear it or, you know, and so on. So it's a meaningless statement. And this was noticed not for some reason, not early enough in the history of logical positivism, but eventually by the time you get to the 1960s and the Anglophone like philosophical world, people were like, yeah, this was a bad idea. Maybe we should kind of like move on because this is just incoherent and there's no way to save it.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Yeah. And there's just better ways to think about epistemology, such as like a Bayesian way. Just me plugging my own views there. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's your channel. You do what you want, man.
All right. You ready for some more pain?
Christians on the wrong side of history. All right, let's do this.
I don't have a prediction on this. Let's just, I'm just going to send it and see what happens, I guess.
Okay.
You're on the wrong side of history, correct? And this isn't a new thing. You've always been on the wrong side of history. Let's go back to the Crusades, the Inquisition, European colonialism, the doctrine of discovery, which is where the Pope said, you know what? If Christianity isn't a religion that's there, you have permission to conquer. Let's talk about the transatlantic slave trade and how Christian churches were pro-slavery. Move forward 100 years, they were also pro-segregation. Not to mention that women have always been held back under Christian values. You guys rejoiced when Roe v. Wade was overturned. And you mourned when gay marriage was legalized. Do you understand that you have always been on the wrong side of history? Presently, you have so much hatred towards transgender humans that you don't want them to have any rights. You won't even acknowledge their pronouns. You realize you've been on the wrong side of history, and all of the anti-vaccine rhetoric that you spread, convincing people to believe that science is evil, you have always been on the wrong side of history. Wake up. You're not the good guys. You are not the good guys. Let's not even mention how Mustache Man supported and upheld Christian values. Let's not even mention that the KKK, a white supremacist group, literally upholds Christian values. You have always been on the wrong side of history. So if you think you're a good person, get out of that religion.
Man, okay. I don't like posts like that because there's like bits of truth and bits of like untruth there.
Yeah.
Let's just, we've already covered the at Inspiring Philosophy, we've covered the Inquisitions, the conquest stuff and violence and blah 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 so many times. Ryan, do you have anything to say on those aspects?
No, because I guess, I mean, the main thesis of this video is that there's this one monolithic view that all Christians, every single Christian under the sun, has always affirmed, and it's always evil, 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 and there's never been a single Christian who has ever disagreed with any of those movements that she's talking about, and I'm like, well, I'm sorry, this is just demonstrably false. There's just this thing called basic history. So just to give simply one example. So I was a postdoc at the Center for Philosophy of Religion at the University of Notre Dame. And there's this very famous picture that they have held up in one of the main union buildings. They're really proud of it. You've got a picture of Martin Luther King Jr. and the president of Notre Dame at that time, like shaking hands. And then they had this other picture, if I remember correctly, it was a bunch of KKK members were trying to get off the trains at the train station there near campus, and you had all these Catholics like physically holding them back so they could not get off the train. It could not come. And so right there, you've got just simply one example of a group of Christians who are like, no, we are done with this. This is gross. We will stand against it. And that's the thing. You see that all throughout Christian history. You do see a lot of really ugly moments where the church did some really horrible things, or a church did some really horrible things. And you see lots of other groups go, this is disgusting. We do not stand for it.
Yeah.
It's almost like humans have nuance and that history is complicated.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. And for anybody interested, again, we've covered this topic a lot on Inspiring Philosophy. 2 books I can think of off the top of my head: The Myth of Religious Violence. I forgot the guy's name. And there's another book called Of Popes and Unicorns. And one of the authors is Nguranu, I think is the way to pronounce his last name. 2 really good books to read on this topic. Moving on to the whole like hatred of LGBTQ people and transgender people and stuff like that. I think what I would say there is, again, I would point to the sociological data, and you'd be very surprised between this demarcation between intrinsic religiosity and extrinsic religiosity. And what you actually tend to find is Christian nationalism and that more vitriolic, hate-based rhetoric that you hear tends to actually fall in line with people that are extrinsically religious, where Christianity is better to be understood as a social political identity. But people that are intrinsically religious, where like their worldview is actually action informing and shaping their beliefs and their character and their morals and blah, 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 you're actually going to find quite the opposite. People are going to still hold to the moral attitudes of traditional Christianity, but that hatred towards people that are not congruent, like their values and their identities are not congruent with what you find within the Christian worldview. There's no hatred there. There's compassion. And what you tend to find is people are not trying to strip them of their rights or their identities or anything like that. I think, and so I can sympathize, right, with what this person is saying when it comes to these topics, because it's hard to see past some of the loud, hateful voices and then think that there's a separation between them. But I think if you do some more digging, you'll very quickly find that Christians are not standing for the hateful vitriol that I think they are, that you think they are. So that's the answer there. Anything to add there, Ryan?
No, I think that was well put.
Cool. All right. This one's going to be fun. Okay, we actually have is the first words.
Ooh.
I'm trying to make another prophecy here. That's all.
Yeah. Think about it for a second.
Okay. I'm going to make this is going to be a guess based off the fact that like it's Alex O'Connor, and he's been like on this kick about Mormonism recently. Something about the golden plates, and trying to compare that to the resurrection and try to like say why Christians, if they believe in the resurrection, they should believe in the golden plates for Mormons and stuff like that. That's my prediction.
Okay.
Here we go.
Actually have 11 eyewitnesses to the Mormon golden plates whose names testimony we still have today. 3 of those witnesses say that they saw the angel Moroni give Joseph Smith the plates with their own eyes. And even when they fell out with Joseph Smith and left the church, they still continued to assert that they had witnessed these events. We don't have anything like this kind of extant written testimony for the resurrection of Jesus.
How did Alex come up with such? I mean, he stated it very well. He got the facts all right.
Okay, this was not. I thought this was Alex, like wholesale. I was not expecting to see the Mormon creators talking about this either. So half fulfilled prophecy, I guess.
There we go.
Let's see what they say.
All right. Like, how in the world, Jacob, do you have any idea how Alex O'Connor could have...
maybe he literally is repeating verbatim what I told him during our 4-hour dinner conversation.
Okay,
okay.
so it's just like a reaction video.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, fair enough.
So, Alex says we have the eyewitnesses for the Mormon plates. People could have recanted their testimony about the plates, but they didn't. Yada yada yada. But we don't have anything similar to that with the Gospels. So I have a lot to say on that. What do you have to say?
I guess okay. Here, how do I put this nicely? There's a difference between being articulate, and there's a difference between being articulate and being actually like well researched and know what you're talking about. And a certain kind of education in the United Kingdom focuses on one and not the other. I'll just leave it at that.
Fair enough. My pushback there is to say that we have nothing like that is true, because we have something way better. I think we have the Gospels and Acts, which are highly reliable accounts of the historical Jesus, rooted in eyewitness testimony from authors that do not feel the freedom to make up historical or literary theological facts to fit their narrative. And I think that when we test the Gospels internally and externally, we time and time again come away with the conclusion that these are reliable documents rooted in eyewitness testimony, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if you were to count up the testimonies that come from the Gospels and Acts, you have a mix of first, second, and possibly third-hand accounts of people that have claimed to have multimodal experiences with Jesus post-death. And you can get at least minus, if you take away the 500 account in 1 Corinthians, you have 21 unique eyewitness testimonies talking about the risen Jesus that are multimodal in nature and all this other stuff. Yeah, you know what? I don't have anything like what the Mormon plates testimony is about. I have something remarkably, quantifiably, and qualitatively better in that instance. On top of that, I think, and Ryan, you might disagree or agree here. On top of that, I think that given perfect being theism, I'm going to expect an incarnation and something like the atonement and something like the resurrection. I call it like, given perfect being theism, I'm going to expect like God to become incarnate and live among us and teach us and be a moral exemplar and all that other stuff. And he's going to vindicate the fact that he is God incarnate with something I would call suspiciously resurrection-y, some sort of like super miracle, because what better way to broadcast that you are God and you are going to defeat death and get to enjoy eternal life with you and all this other stuff by literally defeating death by raising from the dead. And so, yeah, I long story short, I think the case is not like the Mormon one. Alex is right. Ours is way better.
Yeah. So 2 thoughts. One, so in the little book about a big God, I do argue for what's called an incarnation anyway view, that if God creates a universe like ours, then for one of his most central purposes being to enter into friendship with humans, then regardless of what happens in that universe, if there's like a fall from grace or not, you should expect God to become incarnate, because it's the most fitting way to demonstrate solidarity with humanity and enter into friendship with humans. So I give an argument for like why you should expect there to be an incarnation built into my eternal in love. The second thought I had is a lot of these videos. So what they involve is something called a dialectical disadvantage.
Yes.
Yes. So this is something I talked about on my show ages ago. And I remember, Than, I remember you asking me about it more. here's what a dialectical disadvantage is. It's where a particular problem or idea is really easy to state in a clear and concise way, but the answer is not going to be short and sweet, especially for like a TikTok audience.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to like trying to like really build a whole case for the resurrection of Christ, like you have so many different lines of evidence to consider that just simply just going through the different lines of evidence, that just takes a long time. Which is not a bad thing to have, like, oh my gosh, I've got all this lines of evidence, but that just takes a really long time. So you can't give a short, like, little answer. And now I won't talk about the clickbait. I'll just leave it there. I'll just say, yeah, a lot of these things play off of a dialectical disadvantage, and so it's a bit of sophistry. Is the problem.
I love the dialectical disadvantage point because the problem of evil is a huge one. Like a huge example of this, like especially when you have a really nuanced kind of novel view. Plug in my own view here a little bit. Like when my book on the cosmic story theodicy comes out, like the first 4 chapters are literally me tossing the tables upside down and showing you guys like the assumptions, the standard assumptions, and things that we take as axiomatic when it comes into the problem of evil discussion, why they're wrong. Like that's 4 chapters in the beginning of my book, because, and I'm highlighting that because that's the whole entire point of the dialectical disadvantage. Somebody can go, okay, yeah, but like if God exists, why did the Holocaust happen? And I'm gonna have to be like, oh, here, let's unpack all of this first. But before I can even do that, people are gonna be like, you see, you can't do it. So that's a really important point. I love that. All right, let's get to some super chats here again, because we're at an hour and 20. How much? And we're gonna an hour and 20, 2 hours about when we're gonna finish off here. So, Vermin Trash, thank you again. How was y'all's journey in the faith, and how does one become more holy or get more closer to the Almighty? Apologies if it's too personal of a question. Not for me. Too personal. Ryan, are you okay with answering this?
Yeah. And part of the second half of the question is what I do in the preface of the little book about a big God. So my own journey of faith is really boring. Like, I mean, I grew up in a Christian home and I was baptized when I was 9. So there's nothing exciting. And I actually did not get a job as a summer intern for this missionary organization one year because they did not like my testimony. They're like, well, what was the big difference between like your life before Christ and after Christ? And I said, I was 9 and I grew up going to Sunday school. I always knew about Jesus. Drugs. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, what do you want me to say? Like, I'm like, I was always going to Sunday school. Like my parents always, like, I just grew up in a Christian family. We always went to church. I never had a life before Christ. And this missionary group was just like, that's just, they just looked at me like, are you even Christian? And I'm like, okay, well, clearly this is not going to work out. So I don't have a dramatic story, but I mean, I've had a lot of like dark nights of the soul, a lot of moments of doubt throughout my life. And part of coming out on the other end of the dark night of the soul was when I started really sitting down to write this book, Eternal in Love. And so here is how I try to give an explanation for how you get closer to just anyone, including God. So if you want to know someone well, you want to know something about their character, like what kind of thing are they? What kind of person are they? You want to know something about the reasons for why they do or feel or think whatever it is that they think and feel and do. You want to kind of get in their shoes somewhat, have some kind of empathy with them to some extent. And that's just to know someone well. And that takes time. It takes a lot of practice. So if I want to know Than well, I mean, I have to like interact with him. I have to talk to him. I have to kind of test. Is this really how you see the world? Is this really what you're thinking and feeling right now? I have to constantly be like testing. Do my beliefs about Than actually fit with who Than is?
Yeah.
Now that's just to know someone well. That's not to be in a close personal relationship. Because if I say I'm an FBI agent and I'm trying to track down a criminal, I'm gonna like try to know everything I can about this criminal. I'm going to know that criminal very well. And you're definitely not going to be able to say, oh, they're in a close personal relationship. Because I just know everything about this criminal because I'm studying them, trying to capture them. if I want to be close to someone, I need to know what some of their goals are. What are some of their goals in their projects that they're working on? And I have to find ways to support those projects and those goals. So when you're a parent, you've got kids, you're trying to help your kids figure out what do they want to do with their life. And you try to help, your kid, once they've figured out what they want to do with your life, you try to figure out ways to support it. Same thing with your friends.
Yeah.
You try to figure out ways to support your friends' projects. I want to say the same thing is true about God. You need to know a bit about what God's character is like. You need to kind of try to figure out how to have some sort of empathy with God and understand what God's reasons are for why he thinks and feels and acts the way that he does. And then whatever God's project is, you got to figure out how you can support that. So what I argue for in Eternal in Love is that part of God's project is entering into friendship with humans. And what it means to be friends with God as a human is, well, you need to kind of develop the right sort of character. Because God doesn't want to be friends with garbage people. He wants to be friends with virtuous people, people that have the fruits of the Spirit. Yeah. So if you want to get closer to God, this is a long process. This is not an instantaneous thing, because you don't get close to anyone overnight. That's just not how this works. You can have bonding moments that are really big, but this is a long-term project. So that is going to involve you cultivating the fruits of the Spirit and trying to further God's plan of entering into friendship with as many humans as possible. You're on mute.
Of course I am. Why wouldn't I be? I love that answer, and I'm really big on this kind of stuff. Recently, you might have even seen on like the Exploring Reality thing. I'll occasionally post there still. Like, I just went off on a long rant about the pitfalls of like living the Christian life in isolation of the like lived experience of the Christian life. Like, if you guys are familiar with this ministry called Talk About Doubts, Jonathan McClatchy runs it, and he just asks like experts around the world to like give a little bit of their time to work with people working through their doubts. And almost every single time that I work with somebody that is experiencing a crisis of faith, 9 times out of 10, people are not going to a local church, let alone being integrated into a local church and serving within and through. So not like just the local community of the church and the outside community through the church. People aren't doing that stuff. Like, if you want to get to know God better and build your faith, live it. Like, it in the same way that if I want to get to know my wife better and be closer with my wife, like, I have to parent with her. It's not like just go on dates with her and like do the nice stuff. Like, I have to go through the crappy stuff with her that I don't want to do at the same time. Not saying that I'm not saying my kid being a dad is that. Like, financial struggles. When I went from working in sales to ministry, my wife and I had to struggle through that together, but we got to know each other in a much more deep and intimate way because of that struggle. And so do stuff that you don't want to do that you know you should do because you love God. And I think you'd be very surprised by how much that's actually going to deepen your spiritual walk. Like, I don't like kids. I have 3 kids, and I say I don't like kids, right? But like, I volunteer in youth ministry because I don't like kids, and I know that that's going to like cultivate and habituate me towards like a deeper character that is in step with God. I'll digress there, I guess. But yeah. All right. Than, if someone suffers in life and concludes that life is not worth living, how do you respond, especially in the context of your cosmic story, the Odyssey? Yeah. So I make a distinction here between protological and eschatological states, right? So like this side of life and the next side of life. So if somebody in this side of life is not considering their life worth living, that doesn't mean that they can't do that in the next side of life. That's one thing. The other thing is that the defeat condition that I have outlined is an opportunistic one, and one that's grounded in culpability. In other words, the type of suffering that is allowed is suffering that doesn't make it impossible for an agent to live a life on the whole good. And God having all the resources he needs to help somebody find meaning in their life such that they will endorse the life they've lived on the whole, can bring about any of those instances, anything that he needs in order to get that agent to endorse their life on the whole as worth living. And so the long story short is I don't think there will be any such agent that will not endorse their life on the whole as good, that is not going to be culpable for their non-belief in Jesus or anything like that. So in other words, like if somebody's not going to be culpable for their non-belief or anything like that, I think they'll get some postmortem opportunity, and then they will experience the defeat of their suffering and endorse their life on the whole as good. Nobody will be inculpably judged, and so therefore anybody that is culpable for their non-belief and therefore not endorsing their life is on the whole good. Well, that's their choice at the end of the day, and God is going to like respect the dignity and freedom of those people in the same way that, like, if I'm a doctor and I have Ryan and Ryan's evil twin coming to me and they have the same exact illness, right? And Ryan says, yeah, give me the medicine. I don't care if I lose my luscious locks, right? And Ryan's evil twin, who has even more better looking hair, goes, no, I would rather die than lose my hair. And they're both properly informed and yada, yada, yada. Like, you're not going to look at me and go, well, Than, you're evil for letting Ryan's evil twin die, when he had everything he needed and made the choice at the end of the day. That's a long story. That's a short answer to that. I'll unpack some of that stuff in my book as it comes out too. Ryan, anything you wanted to?
I just want to make sure I'm understanding it. So the culpability is not necessarily about this side of the grave. It's because there's all these post-mortem opportunities, right?
It's going to be pre or post, because at the end of the day, it doesn't, like, for me, it's because I think there could be. I don't know where the line is for culpability at the end of the day,
Sure.
and I'm not going to pretend I do, right?
Yeah.
But so long as I can say that nobody culpable will be, nobody that is not culpable will never experience the defeat or have the opportunity for defeat, then the system remains internally coherent. That's the.
Because I don't know where the line is either.
I'm not. I think you would have to be omniscient to know where the line is. Because I think that line is going to be a sliding scale depending on the context of what that particular age is going to be on.
Exactly. Because I'm quite a big proponent of post-mortem opportunities, because I really do believe in God's unrelenting love. But I feel like there could be cases where in this life that you could conclude this and not be culpable, but that is fine with me, because I think things don't end at the grave, because I do think there are these post-mortem opportunities.
Exactly. All right. If God is everywhere, must he be in hell? Well, me as an annihilationist, I just think hell is just the ceasing to exist, not having eternal life. So no. How would you answer this, Ryan, for somebody that holds to some sort of ECT model, whether it's like infernalism or like a C.S. Lewis type model?
Yeah, you have to say yes, because to be omnipresent just means God is sustaining everything in existence and knows everything that's going on there. So God's present in terms of knowledge and power. So yeah, he'd have to be present in hell, on any sort of like eternal conscious torment or possible escape where they get sent to hell, but they could get out if they just would repent and reform. Yeah, God's going to have to be present there.
Awesome. All right. Why am I missing what's happening here? Broken boomer stuff here. 1 second. There we go. Shout out to Dr. Mullins and Idol Killer. Thank you, Fire King. They're both great. I love them both. Where do you think the bodies of the damned will be physically located after the resurrection?
So I was going to say, if you're an annihilationist, like, what kind of view do you have on this?
There's a weird question here, because there's another question you have to ask to answer this question, which is like, what as an annihilationist, I think that there is a judgment that happens, right? Like a second, like, and so whether it's like a soul sleep or whether it's like people are like sitting in some sort of like, I don't know what to call it, like what you read in 2 Peter, right? Where like there's the spirits in prison and stuff like that. The ultimate answer here is I don't really know.
Yeah.
I don't really know. And any of the models out there, I'm totally fine with, because it doesn't really like any of the models or biblical interpretations there. It doesn't really bother me. It's not a pressing answer, just because what the stakes to the question however you answer it, don't seem too high to me. If that makes sense.
I think it's fair. I was just curious because like there's some annihilationist views where the soul and the body are both annihilated, and then there's this other group of annihilationists who go like you, the person, the soul, like cease to exist, like you're gone, but God just kind of keeps all these bodies just located in hell, just so they can be burning forever and ever, as this kind of like testament to his like ultimate defeat of evil. So I was curious. Like on that one, you're going to have there's some sort of separate location, and they're located over there. The same thing if you do like eternal conscious torment or possible escape, it's going to have to be some sort of other spatial location that they are.
Yeah.
One of my favorite answers is not on Son of the Damned. It's on where the souls, where are they located that are waiting for the resurrection. And Nicole Orsame, he's this late medieval philosopher. The French king asked him to do a translation of Aristotle's book on the world. And he's like, can I do my own commentary as well? And the king's like, I don't care. Just give me the translation. So in his commentary on it, he's giving all these arguments against Aristotle's view on space and time. And one of these arguments against it is, well, there has to be a void. Like there can actually be a bunch of space where there's no physical objects taking it up. And there's like this kind of spatial vacuum. And so what Orsame says is like, well, actually, like this works, this makes sense. And probably what's on the other side of that spatial vacuum, that's probably where the resurrected Lord is hanging out with all the souls that are waiting for resurrection. So you've got like one person who's got a physical body, and then the rest are just these disembodied souls hanging out on the other side of the void, on the other side of the universe. So there you go. Medieval French theology.
Okay. Let me put this away. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. We are going to do one more video to look at, and then we'll finish off the super chats, and then we'll do the raffle. So,
oh yeah.
This one will be interesting. I have no clue where this is going to go because I don't know if you know who Bradley Martin is. He's a fitness influencer.
Is this the guy who was like, he like fits 3 days into a single day?
I have no clue.
Okay.
I have no clue where this is going to go. So let's see what happens.
Religious? I'm not religious, no. No one has any evidence that religion is real or God is real. There's evidence that Jesus existed, but is there evidence that he was the Son of God or God himself? We're the only human species that can create fiction. We can
Wait. I heard something and I just really want to make sure.
Just make these fictional things up in our that he was the Son of God or God himself. We're the only human species that can create
human species.
The only human species. Okay.
Fiction. We can just make these fictional things up in our mind, and that's all religion is. It's a bunch of fiction.
How do you think it all started?
Probably the Big Bang Theory.
Just completely random?
Yeah, I think we all collided and then we turned into rocks and then we all started rotating, and after billions of years it became more of like a clumpy rock. It became more of like a sphere. We just so happen to be close enough to the sun where we don't burn or freeze.
Do you believe there's evil in the world?
No. I believe people have neurological issues.
I think for me, the reason why I believe in God is because evil is I feel like it's so real. I feel like Yeah,
I think if your frontal lobe doesn't develop properly, you get hit in your head as a child, you suffer trauma, anything can you up mentally.
Wow, that was a whole lot of something.
Yeah, that's not the fitness guy I was thinking of.
Yeah, well, okay, so here's what I actually have something interesting to add to this. Why do we live in a reality where we're the only human species that actually thinks about gods and thinks about the divine and thinks about these things? Like, why do we live in a reality where like the laws of nature brought about people that didn't think about these things? Well, it seems to me that like if there is a God behind the universe, that he would orient reality to create people that would have these things on their minds, because he wants to have that perfect middle ground between having his presence known, but not too known or not known at all. That seems to actually fit within the Christian meta narrative in by my lights. Like that actually seems to be evidence for Christianity and all that other stuff. So that'd be like one little tidbit I could say and extract out of there in a short way.
Yeah, and I have that built into my chapter on why would God create this particular universe.
Yep.
Is exactly this is part of the story of what kind of basic features would this universe have to have, and this is one of them that I discuss. So yeah, I think that's part of the story, part of the answer, or I guess response to this video. The other thing is, ever since you guys like forced me to get on TikTok, like,
which I'm not even on anymore.
Yeah. So like you and like John and Matt and like everybody was like, yeah, you got to be on there. And I'm like, do I? And I keep coming across this stuff of like, well, there's no evidence. There's no evidence. And I'm like, I don't know. Have you ever read a book? Like, just read a book. I don't care what book you read. Just read a book before you make a video. And if you're going to make a video about like a religion or something, maybe read a book about that religion. I don't know. So it's just this constant thing I see that people just making these bold claims that they've not even bothered to do research on. Because it is really tiring to go, there's just no evidence. I'm like, just read Swinburne's book, The Existence of God.
Yes.
If that's too difficult because it's long,
that's lots of math.
It's got a lot of math, and there's like, you're like, what
does God exist? Top level book.
Yeah, exactly. Just read the Does God Exist? And if you can't handle that, then just, I don't know, watch any of like the random like videos that a million apologists have made on arguments for the existence of God. It's one of these issues where it's like, you have an embarrassment of resources at your fingertips. So if you don't want to read, you could just sit and listen to something, but they're not doing it. So at this point, it's not even laziness. It is a willed ignorance. And I think this is a very serious problem in our society right now, is a constant state of willed ignorance.
Yeah, I agree. All right. We will get back to super chats here in just a moment. Time's almost coming up, guys. We gotta end the stream in like 15 minutes. So we're gonna power through the super chats. Remember, we're doing a giveaway. So you get a free shirt and you'll get a copy of Eternal Love, Ryan's new book. Where it answers all these funny questions. So before we get to the super chats again, really quickly, I have to do this. Otherwise, I will get yelled at by Matt, the all-seeing overlord of our social media. Some people claim that Paul never believed in a physical resurrection of Jesus, but instead merely escaped the physical world and became a god, much like the Greco-Roman gods of Jesus' time. So are they right? Have Christians gotten it wrong this whole time? If you want early access to this video, please consider becoming a supporter of Inspiring Philosophy. Wasn't that riveting?
There we go.
I actually got a lot of really fun feedback on that video too, so I'm excited for you guys to see it. All right, let's get to the last of these super chats. If I can find what we did last. Here we go. Okay. To me, it seems philosophical, and we got to answer these a little bit quicker as we finish off. To me, it seems philosophical debates on morality rarely make it to what the biblical conception of morality is, based on relationships predicated on the truth of the Imago Dei that aim to bring God's gift of life. Anything?
I don't know, because so Drew Johnson has this book called Hebraic Philosophy, and one of the things he mentions in there is that a lot of different Hebrew Bible scholars will say that the ethics of the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible is grounded in empathy. So empathy is a very important like moral concept in their moral philosophy, and that's something that a lot of moral systems today are very interested in. So sentimentalism, for example, is like one movement, and that they care a lot about empathy. That plays a big role in the way they look at just morality and ethics. So I guess I just would question the rarely part of it.
Yeah, it happens. Like Mike and I think both say that like if you're gonna find some sort of a meta ethic or normative ethic, I guess in the Bible, it's gonna be like a type of virtue ethics. I think is what it really is going to teach at the end of the day. So, Apologetics, Brian, I got to get you back on the show, brother. And Than, got to get you on for the first time. Keep up the great work, guys. Yeah, shoot me an email, man. Than@inspiringphilosophy.com.
Yeah, and you've already got my email, so yeah, you know where to call me.
Ryan, Than, do you doubt and how do you deal with it? I have doubts all the time, but the way I kind of deal with it personally for me, it's just like I don't need to have the answer to every single question, and I'm okay with having some unanswered questions if I have them, knowing that I'll either find out the answer later, or at the very least, like maybe I just have a probabilistic hit to my worldview, but like big deal at the end of the day, right? Like
Mhm.
that's the short answer.
Yeah.
Anything quick?
And like I mentioned earlier, I've had moments of doubt. I've had dark nights of the soul, and a lot of what came out of that was this book, Eternal in Love.
Mhm.
So there was a lot of anger, a lot of tears, a lot of laughter, a lot of things like that, and a lot of study and research and soul searching that went into this book. So yeah, the end result of my doubt for a while, at least, because I'll have doubts later on. End result of this previous stage of doubt was this book.
Yeah. Is there an internal contradiction within atheism? Atheism is just one proposition, so I don't know that you can have an internal contradiction, because it's just a proposition God does not exist.
Yeah, I need a few more propositions. Yeah.
I've been getting so much neo-pagan stuff recently. It will never make sense how people can worship some low-rent force demons over the one true God. That's why I love the divine council language, by the way, and the view in the Bible. I think you can really, it's a really fun segue, because I agree with you.
One of the things that baffled me the first time I moved to Scotland was the number of hippies and pagans there are in Scotland, and so I just didn't know this was a thing. But yeah, the neo-paganism stuff, like there's a lot of pockets around the world of it. So yeah, it's surprising.
Okay, what makes atheism probably not true in comparison to the Christian view, especially in the context of the problem of evil and the problem of suffering? Man, if we had time, I would lay out a lot of fun stuff here. My book should be published by the end of the summer. So for now, I'm just going to say patiently wait for that, because I think you'll be really pleasantly surprised when you realize that my theodicy actually doubles as what I call a ramified narratological case for Christianity. So Chase, Peeler, Than, I've recognized you never streamed the last few weeks. What's up with that? I don't know. Do I have a really recognizable face? That's probably a good thing you recognize me, since I'm supposed to be like, hired by Mike and stuff like that. Favorite Christian metal bands? Man, I wish I could bands. I think For Today is what the name of it. Hold on. Ryan, do you have anything off the top of your head?
I mean, For Today, yeah, it is a band. Zayo is probably one of my favorite Christian metal bands.
Ask me again when I have time to remember the names of the bands. Who is to say God doesn't regulate suffering or remove evildoers? If something's deleted such that it never existed, how would we know? We don't. That's one of the interesting aspects about the problem of evil as well, is we actually don't know. I think, in fact, we actually do know some instances where God does intervene miraculously. I think miracle counts for people are healed and stuff like that.
That seems right to me, but if something is deleted such that it never existed, that sounds like you're changing the past.
I don't think that was probably the
okay
intention.
Because I was like, I've got a whole chapter on that in my Divine Time Maker book. I've got a chapter on it's on hyper time and can God change the past. It's a fun debate that one's good. So it's not in the little book, but yeah.
Dan, any plans for a new resurrection series? If you guys want it, because I know you guys know, for anybody that knows me, if you guys want it, and you know that I have a really intricate way of arguing for the resurrection, make it known enough that Mike will be like, yeah, Than, do it, because people are asking for it, and I will work on it. I promise. Funny thing about the KKK, the original uniform of it had Islamic symbols in a book called the Quran. I did not know that. Did you? I'd have to fact check that.
I don't know.
Interesting if it's true. You should do a video on Mormon arguments. I'm thinking about it eventually. I need to dig into it a little bit more. To both, probability of the resurrection. I'm not going to assign a number to it, but much higher than any of the competing theories, such that I think it's most reasonable to believe in the resurrection. Right? Would you agree? Or
I agree. I am not going to assign a number to it though, because I don't know how you assign numbers to these basic things.
What is the Christian way to approach a teenager who struggles with gender dysphoria, keeps attempting suicide, despises the faith? Ask a psychologist, not a philosopher or an apologist.
Correct.
That is what I'm going to refer you to do.
Yep.
The android sent by Cyberlife. I'm a Christian and have recently been having unprompted dreams about groups of unsaved people repenting and being baptized. Nothing around to influence it. How do you know if dreams are from God or not? I wish I could help.
You see if it comes true. If it
Yeah.
comes true, it was from God.
Yeah. I think I ink, therefore I can. No Mike to nerd up the stream today. I see. Is it Mike that nerds up the stream or me, man? Because I feel like I like to dork out when Mike's not here, and for him to he's usually the one trying to rein me in. What theory of atonement do you guys hold to? I have a weird view, closest to Chris's Victor, but there's a lot of stuff in there that I can't unpack right now. Right?
This is the one doctrine that I don't have strong beliefs on because I'm not happy with any of the theories. I've only published on penal substitution, but yeah, I've got some forthcoming work where I kind of reflect on it a bit. But this is one where I'm dissatisfied with anything I have to say on the topic.
Yeah, I kind of made my own. So, how would you explain the Eucharist as an idealist? It depends on what kind of idealist you are. If you're like a non-realist about the physical world, like that's how far you take idealism. I'd have to think about it. But you could still hold to like some sort of real presence without it being like, it all depends on what you mean by the Eucharist and how you view the Eucharist and what you think about the real presence and what you mean by ideal. There's so many dependencies there that I think it really depends at the end of the day. Is a moral argument dead? If by a deductive approach, I think so. I don't know that there is a logical contradiction in moral realism and negation of theism.
So there's a book in my really quick. So there's a book that somebody's working on that's going to be in my book series on the doctrine of God, where they're going to be offering an inductive argument from morality to God. So they'll release details on that later on.
I'm big on that stuff, and like moral knowledge arguments I think are good too. I'm only going through these really fast because we have a few minutes left here before I have to go pick up my son from school.
Mm-hmm.
Why is Than so cute? I don't know, man. It's just God made me this way. But he also likes how plausible is ontological subordinationist view on total evidence. I haven't dug into it enough holistically to give you something like concrete, but I would just say not very.
Is this about the Trinity?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, just read all the work I've done on it. I answered it all already. You can go to my website. I've got all the papers there.
Was Mary sinless and a perpetual virgin? If so, what is the evidence? I'm not going to answer that because I'm not going to tell you my denomination. Anyway, I answer that, people are going to know, so I'm not going to answer. I commented on a few streams about how you look so different every time you were on. Yeah, I change my appearance all the time, man. Sometimes I have a beard, sometimes I have a mustache. I might gain a few pounds here, lose 20 there. You'll never know. I'm always going to keep you guessing. That's the fun. This is for the Zao shout out and for Than's gains. Also, Demon Hunter, Crimson Moonlight, and Hell's Enemy are good Christian metal bands. Heck yeah, brother. All right. Any big plans coming up? A lot that I cannot get into, but we have so many fun things happening. With that, let's get into the raffle finally. So I'm going to, for anybody that wins, I'm going to put the email address in the chat for you really quick, guys. If you win, email that guy here. That's Matt, the guy that always yells at me about stuff. Can you see that in the chat? If you can't, sorry, let me know, but that should work. All right. If you can't see that email address in the thing, then just let us know. How do I work this thing? Click to spin. Here we go. Okay. For the first winner is going to be all right. First, wait. Let's just maybe I'll share my screen on this.
Yeah, because it was like there's some kind of excitement going on your end.
Yeah, did you hear that?
We're all just like,
I didn't think about that. There we go. You see that? Okay, Fire King 582. You are the first winner of the Eternal Love Book in a shirt. Yeah. Okay. So remember, email Matt@inspiringphilosophy.com. Let us know that you won, and we will get your contact information and go from there. Next winner is going to be Okay, loaves of bread. You won the prize.
Very
Again,
good.
email Matt so that way we can get you guys the information you need. 3 more winners. Who's it gonna be? This way, you have won. Again, email Matt at inspiringphilosophy.com. 2 more. I keep on wanting I ink, therefore Than to win, man.
I know. Me too.
Rafu, you are our 4th winner. Again, email Matt and we'll get you what you need. All right, last winner. Here we go. Niels van Dugin. You are our number 5 winner. Again, email Matt at inspiringphilosophy.com. We'll get your contact info and we'll get you your prizes. Thank you so much, you guys, for helping us have a successful and fun stream here. Thank you, Ryan, for coming. Link for Ryan's book will be in the description of the video again. And friendly reminder again, if you like what we do here at Inspiring Philosophy, and you like seeing me, which you probably do, maybe you don't, I'm not too sure yet. You guys are kind of hard to read. If you want to support me to be full-time here at Inspiring Philosophy, remember to leave a little comment in the comment box letting us know that the money to go specifically to me if you want this to go to me going full-time. And if you guys want to see more stuff like this for like giveaways and fun real little reactions and all this other stuff, let us know. We want to do stuff that you want to do. With that, I'm going to close this out. Ryan, thanks again for coming, man.
Yep. Thank you for having me.
You made it to the end of this video, which means this message matters to you. If you want to see more content like this reaching people for Christ, you can help make it happen. Your support makes these videos possible. Click the link below and donate today. And if you want to go even deeper, consider joining our Patreon community. You'll get early access to videos, behind-the-scenes content, and a place to connect with others passionate about this mission.